brought her to meet female firefighters. This was what she faced when she walked in. Trans, for sure. Right, activists? You devouring mothers in carrying garb? You devouring mothers in carrying garb. Butchers and liars support gender affirming. What are you talking? This is such a wholesome story. What? Stop being weird. Why are you always so weird, Jordan? That's so strange. Hey, here's a wholesome story about my daughter who wanted to meet other women firefighters and feel empowered through that act. And then it's like, okay, cool. It's like, how do I make this about trans people? So the Emergency Act has officially report investigation concluded. Jordan Peterson is very mad. Lobster Man rages. Apparently he's melting down on the Twitters, and I wanted to quickly see. It's kind of hard because he has me blocked from this the cider meme. 10 times as big, and not just the truckers this time. Oh, bloody hell, maybe it's time for another convoy. I'm dead serious. Another convoy. Follow me. A message to you, Justin Trudeau, and Jagmeet Singh on the day of dismal triumph. Did you make a video on it?
Of course you realize this means war.
Jordan Peterson, be normal, challenge impossible. Jordan Peterson just tweeted this out to the Prime Minister of Canada. And he's been,
of course, you know,
he's dead serious.
War. Of course you realize this means war. Of course you know this
Oh
means
my god.
war.
Did you get far enough to know that there are Space Jam clips in here, Jordan? Oh, what's weird is he's not getting a lot of engagement anymore. I don't know if that's also no one is on Twitter because the whole thing is falling apart, so that could be a part of it. He's also a prolific tweeter. Like, he is addicted. You could just feel his thumbs doing this kind of shit when he picks up the phone. If you think that won't happen, you were sleepwalking Canadians into precisely the dystopia you were aiming to create. Oh, bloody hell. This means, just to be clear, that all future governments, conservatives to socialist, can now use the full might of the state against all of us who dare to raise a protest. The fact that okay, so let's just be really clear about what happened, okay? There was a occupying force that took over parts of Ottawa that were endangering the citizens of Ottawa, and they were eventually shutting down bridges in an attempt to push forth their demands. Their demands were completely unreasonable because they were nebulous. Eventually, they were freedom. So basically, you're just holding the city as well as elements of the workers, because a lot of people could not go to their jobs because they were shutting down auto factories, and that really obviously hurts them, for nothing. Your demands are not, hey, do this, improve the lives of workers, improve the lives of truckers, improve the blah, blah, blah. At first, it was vaccine mandates, and both the truckers were like, you're not representing us, and the truckers union said the same thing. Then the rest of the unions in Canada were like, yeah, you don't represent the workers. This is a astroturfed, far-right, fucking neo-Nazi ridden cesspool of extremism, combining elements of QAnon, anti-vaxxers, the far-right, freedom, not to mention one of the founding members is a straight-up, like, superiority of the Anglo-Saxon race motherfucker. Like, there's more than enough racism, extreme racism from that white supremacist, who was also platformed by people like Fox News, who didn't know any of this. No one knew any of this. You even had people all the way who were supposed to be lefties in America, people like Richard Wolff, you know, who's obviously been on my show a number of times, going on Jimmy Dore's show so they can both shit on unions because they don't realize how this is actually effectively, for the first time, almost meeting the demands, again, of the far right who don't want Justin Trudeau in power. I understand why from a distance, it may have seemed that, like, some of the things that were going on were a workers' revolt, because their branding was actually quite clever. If you said that this is about the truckers, the good old-fashioned hardworking, at a time when, you know, we have so many problems, well then, hell yeah, a whole bunch of politicians are going to use this for political opportunism, jump on top and be like, I, as a conservative, also support the hardworking American truckers, like the rest of these hardworking shows. And what do you have to say? I am the Queen of Canada, Queen Dedulo, and I am the true Dominion, and all of you are my servants, and you must give me all of your money. Okay, well, maybe not this person over here. They seem to be a little, let's just say, strange. But other people, you, sir, you must seem like a hard worker. Yes, I work very much to uphold the superiority of the white race, and I want to make sure that I can subjugate all the other races below me. Okay, well, maybe not this guy. Let's just shuffle on over here. Hey, you're actually sleeping in a truck. What do you do? Oh, yeah, I rented this so I could park it in the middle of the city and honk a lot so that people with disabilities can't sleep. Yeah. Oh, because I hate Justin Trudeau. That's why. Also, freedom, and the vaccine is poison and it's trying to kill us all. That's basically what it was. And Americans, and people all over the world were just like, whoa. I mean, Americans primarily funded it once the sources for all that came out. And so this is basically the story. You can watch the documentary at youtube.com/the Serfs TV. I did in collaboration with It Could Happen Here, Robert Evans' amazing podcast. And we went through all the receipts, all the history of the original founders, how each one of them has direct ties to either separatist movements, Wexit movements, Canadian independence movements, far right extremism, white supremacy, white nationalism, and then people started to suddenly join in large droves because they thought this was actually, oh, this is about workers, oh, this is about freedom, oh, this is about liberation, oh, this is about, it was a mishmash of a whole bunch of things happening simultaneously, getting funded by a lot of the petit bourgeoisie of America as well as Canada. And so yes, eventually, because of not only mass police incompetence, but police collusion, there was obviously a huge problem with police being super friendly in Canada, like in the United States, to the far right, helping them set up fucking tents, helping them fucking move their chairs and stuff like that. Just like a good old like, oh, how you doing there? Yeah, I hope you're having a great time over here, buddy. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to set up your truck, why don't you move it right over there, and then we'll get that little barbecue set up there. I mean, eventually it was a resort. It was like a Canadian resort. There was massive DJ parties, hot tubs, barbecue cookouts, non-stop honking, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, it got to such a point where eventually it fell upon the purview of the federal government, who enacted the Emergencies Act. And this obviously became a huge problem for a lot of people on the left, especially right freedom absolutists, because they felt like this was a massive infringement on the free speech of potential activism in Canada. What if we were to do something like this? What would happen? What if the Canadian government suddenly cracked down on left-wing protesters? To which I have to tell you, they fucking do. Always has been. What do you think the original inception of the RCMP was for? This is for controlling the Indian problem, quote unquote, in this country. It's an entirely racist federal police force that has huge problems that, yes, is to this day used to enforce the will of corporations against Indigenous sovereignty. That's what's happening to the Wet'suwet'en up north. That's why the RCMP can come in there and arrest people even though they're on someone's sovereign land. And no one does anything about it. Protesters, sure. Journalists report on it. Yes. Outrage internationally. Yeah. We'll do fundraisers and things, but it's still something that is allowed to continue to happen. And it doesn't matter if it's there, it doesn't matter if it's old growth forest. They crack down on left-wing protesters. Always have. It's the meme, you know, with the astronaut shooting the other astronaut. That's the reality of the situation. When Indigenous protesters, like the Mohawk people, were teaming up in solidarity with a whole bunch of different bands across the country, and we're starting to block trains, which actually effectively was something that was going to hurt corporations' bottom line, immediately they were met with violent resistance and enforcement of the state. Because yes, that is what always happens. This was one of those things where this was just allowed to grow to such a size because it was, yes, predominantly right-wing white Canadians who were dominating this one. And the police, again, are kind of in this like, well, these aren't the skulls we normally crack. What's going on here? Kind of situation. And so, yes, the Emergency Act was authorized. When that happened, all y'all in America, the Joe Rogans, every single person suddenly started talking about how Trudeau is a dictator or an authoritarian communist. He's basically Stalin #2. And that's why now you see so many people on the right making jokes about invading Canada militarily and liberating Canada from the tyranny of Justin Trudeau, because people like Jordan Peterson are like, yes, he is an authoritarian leader. I've studied this my entire life. Listen to me, you bloody hell, woke moralist. And that's why you're seeing shit like this. It was so unbelievably transparent for a measure, by the way. It was done through, again, a parliamentary vote, which is a representation of democracy, because you elect your MPs. It could be dissolved once again by a parliamentary vote. It could only be enacted for a period before it had to be renewed once again by by a parliamentary vote. And then after it was used, immediately, directly, there would be an investigation. I'll say that. An investigation, a public investigation, in which everyone would have to testify. It's not something that, like, Trudeau was like, can't wait to use the Emergency Measures Act. It's something like, this fucking sucks, because I'm going to do this, and it's obviously going to have huge ripple effects and benefits to all of my political competitors, because everyone's going to look at this as tyrannical, but I'm really running out of options because the police in Ottawa are completely inept. That's basically it. Oh, and some transphobia in there. My 3-year-old daughter always says, I want to be a firefighter boy. She's not trans. She just doesn't see women represented on the firefighters on TV. She didn't know girls could be firefighters. I brought her to meet female firefighters. This is what she faced when she walked in. Trans, for sure. Right, activists? You devouring mothers in carrying garb? You devouring mothers in carrying garb. Butchers and liars support gender affirming. What are you talking? This is such a wholesome story. What? Stop being weird. Why are you always so weird, Jordan? That's so strange. Hey, here's a wholesome story about my daughter who wanted to meet other women firefighters and feel empowered through that act. And then it's like, okay, cool. It's like, how do I make this about trans people? How do I make this about disgusting trans people? Oh, great. He's teaming up with Glinner. Together at last. Amazing. On LGBTQ History Month, my friend has been banned for a week for saying this basic fact. Please, Elon Musk, there is a mental health crisis and trans rights activists are targeting those of us trying to talk about it by reporting on anything containing the word. You know what's wild is the mind virus that infects you seems to be one in which transphobes just can't stop going down this alt-right pipeline, because the only people who want anything to do with them are other gross alt-righters who happen to have other forms of bigotry. So suddenly they're climate change denialists. Suddenly they're race realists. Suddenly they're talking about IQ and black crime rates and shit like that. It's like, oh, odd how this keeps happening. Seems like there's a virus. This is 100% true. The conversion therapy scare was a lie, and the law's mandated gender-affirming care have essentially ended the honest clinical counseling enterprise. Anything you say, dear, is not psychotherapy. Period. At Elon Musk. You tell Elon Musk, Jordan. Go get him. Go get him. I think it should also probably be pointed out that they are the ones doing that. That they're the ones doing the conversion therapy-esque tier ascientific refusal to understand what the body and consensus of science says. Like right now, that same body and consensus of science shows that conversion therapy does not work, and conversion therapy is torture. That's the current understanding of conversion therapy. That same body of science, every major medical association in the United States conclusively agrees that gender-affirming care can alleviate the symptoms of gender dysphoria and lead to better outcomes for children who are trans who want to undergo it. That's the current. Like, I posted a report on that collectively looked at 27 different studies, a meta-analysis of 27 different studies that showed, and this is a new meta-analysis that just came out, less than 1% regret transition. I was looking up the rate of knee surgery. Several studies point towards 20%. Regret. 20% regret. Less than 1%. Once again, of the less than 1%, those who did said the overwhelming reason was societal stigma. Like, the evidence is so overwhelming in the opposite direction that you can only have, at this point, an ideological agenda and hatred for trans people to keep pushing this as a valuable argument that deserves our time. Or that deserves conversation, or deserves a place in the fucking newspapers, the New York Times. No, we don't need to keep doing opinion pieces, but what about the less than 1% who detransition? Can we platform them? Can we give them the microphone? Can we give them the opportunity to say how they were influenced, by all this ideology and stuff like that, rather than something that is affecting and has positive outcomes for 99% of the people who are undergoing it? Again, you wouldn't do this for anything else. I've never seen the knee surgery crusade. Almost 20% of people who experience knee surgeries regret it. We're mutilating people. We're butchering them. We're killing them. I've never seen them do this for fucking appendix surgeries. Appendix lives matter. Appendix rights. We are the appendix rights movement. How dare you butcher people, taking a part of their very soul out of their bodies. It's like, no, these are inflamed appendixes that need to come out or could kill the host, let's just say. This is a thing that should happen. It's pretty wild. So you don't need to humor them, by the way, when they do this shit anymore. Clearly, The Onion doing better reporting than the New York Times. It is journalism's sacred duty to endanger the lives of as many trans people as possible. Get fucked, The Onion! Get fucked, The Onion! How dare you! They took my family from me. They took everything. Everything. No. You did it to yourself. Just you. You and no one else. You did it to yourself. Just you. You and no one else. You and no one else. I can't even remember the fucking the Radiohead lyrics. You do it to yourself. I'm going to open that article. Hold on. I just retweeted it. From The Onion, it is journalism's sacred duty to endanger the lives of as many trans people as possible. The task of reporting is not a simple one. Each and every day, reporters and editors at publications like The Onion make difficult decisions about which issues should receive attention, knowing that our coverage will influence not only how people think, but also how they act. This responsibility is at the core of an ongoing debate over whether news coverage of transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming people is unduly biased. As the world's leading news publication with a daily readership of 4.3 trillion, The Onion is compelled to weigh in. We firmly believe that it's journalism's sacred duty to endanger the lives of as many trans people as possible. Quentin is a 14-year-old assigned female at birth who now identifies as male against the wishes of his parents. His transition was supported by one of his unmarried teachers, who is not a virgin. He stole his parents' car and drove to the hospital, where a doctor immediately began performing top surgery on him. Afterwards, driving home drunk from the hospital, Quentin became suicidally depressed, and he wonders now, homeless and ridden with gonorrhea, if transition was a mistake. We just made Quentin up, and that's okay. It doesn't mean stories like this aren't potentially happening everywhere, constantly. Good journalism is about finding those stories, even when they don't exist. It's about asking the tough questions and ignoring the answers you don't like, then offering misleading evidence in service of preordained editorial conclusions. In our case, endangering trans people is the lodestar that shapes our coverage. Frankly, if our work isn't putting trans people at further risk of trauma and violence, we consider it a failure. We stand behind our recent obsessed-seeming torrent of articles and essays on trans people. We believe faithfully depicts their lives experienced as weird and gross. We remain dedicated to finding angles that best frame the basic rights of gender nonconforming as up for debate, and we will use these same angles over and over in hopes that this repetition makes them suffer. As journalists, it is our obligation to entertain any and all pseudoscience that gives bigotry an intellectual veneer. Not only bigotry, by the way, it should be reiterated, the actual bigots themselves to be able to pass legislation. Because that's the real danger with what the New York Times has been doing, and the BBC and the Guardian and every single one of you irresponsible motherfuckers who didn't do any due diligence and is just willing to platform these extremist stories in order to scare everyone. Then we have actual far-right extremists in the US being like, we need to pass this legislation. And then people are like, well, no, it really seems like it's kind of just bigoted and marginalizing people who are already marginalized. Well, I know you'd say that, but don't worry. I have a bunch of liberal publications that say otherwise. Hey, here's an opinion piece from the BBC. Here's an opinion piece from the New York Times. Here's an opinion piece from the Guardian. And then boom, it's like, whoa, that does sound scary. I didn't know that we were actually endangering the lives of countless lesbians who are being targeted by trans women who are trying to attack them and sexually harass them all the time. I didn't know that was a massive phenomenon that was destroying the lives of others. Maybe I do need to entertain this. Whoa, I didn't know that there was one story that is kind of exaggerated about a person who detransitioned, and now I'm very, very scared of this entire process, and apparently it's just happening to children as young as 0. Yes, children as young as 0 are getting these surgeries, these incredibly invasive surgeries, and they're irreversible. -1 kids already. Just the concept of it. If you think that you're gonna have a kid, people already begin gender-affirming care and decide what kind of gender that kid is going to be before even insemination. That is what I'm worried about and scared of, and it should be something that has equal fucking credence. As journalists, it is our obligation to entertain any and all pseudoscience. It is against free speech to stop us from fixating on the genitals. Much of the recent debate concerns medical procedures, particularly in children, and whether things like hormone replacement therapy or gender-affirming surgeries are safe and appropriate. Indeed, there are critical questions to be asked about the social complexities of gender, as well as medical ethics in a profit-driven healthcare system. We are simply not interested in any of that. Instead, we will use flawed data and spurious logic to repeatedly write the same handwriting arguments, asking whether or not suddenly too many trans people are around. Journalistic integrity demands nothing less. Naturally, courageous reporting like ours has its detractors. Our critics accuse us of transphobia and are trying to murder us online with their online mobs. They want to destroy our right to free speech and have us all arrested by the police. What gives? Why would you arrest us when it's those deviant trans people you ought to be arresting instead? Do you know what the science says about trans people getting arrested, huh? What if we can find data saying that trans people should be more likely to be arrested? What if our detractors say then? They'll be silent, as well as they should be, and free speech will survive more one day. For more evidence of our time-honored journalistic commitment to endangering lives, please see previous coverage of gay people, immigrants, black people, and women. Institutions with massive platforms like ours must be open to different ways of endangering the trans community. That might mean using the framework of medical care as a boogeyman to imply that trans people are engaged in something sinister. That might mean turning isolated incidents of detransitioning into sweeping generalizations about children being groomed. That might mean identifying the worst prejudices of transgender people face and encouraging our readers to adopt them. Did you forget about how we wrote that there might be data showing that trans people should be more likely to get arrested? What if that were true? Or what if non-binary people are 10 times more likely to be trafficked infants? What if puberty blockers are kind of a sex crime? What if doctors are climbing through the window to suture penises of sleeping cheerleaders? The next time you see a trans person, you ought to ask yourself these questions. All great journalists, and even those lesser journalists who don't work for the Onion, eventually ponder why we do what we do. Is the point of our reporting to illuminate the world around us so that we may make meaning of it? Or is it to cause people in a minority group to question their humanity and persuade others to demonize them? We know where we stand, proudly dreaming of genitals. Research shows that trans people are far more likely than cisgender people to be the victim of a violent crime. We salute our colleagues across the media who are working tirelessly to make that number even higher. The Onion editorial board. Onion going fucking hard doing the real journalism. I wish Satire could get a Pulitzer because, yeah. No, saying the things that no one has the bravery to say. You might say hiding behind the veneer of comedy. I don't even think they're hiding. They're just straight up saying fuck you. This is just a giant middle finger to the rest of the press who've been doing such an irresponsible, disgusting, and frankly dangerous job of covering this for a long ass time. Long ass time.
Do you enjoy the Serfs but prefer not to have to use your eyeballs? Many are saying this. Well, we've got the solution for you. It's the Serf Times in podcast form, available on most major podcasting networks now. If you enjoy it, please consider leaving a good review and feedback because it really helps the show out, apparently, and it's free, just like the podcast.
To our gods, Xander Corvus and Peyton L. Juste, we shall spend many a generations building mighty cathedrals in your honor. To our monarch, Tom Spiker, we are but your oafish jesters, here to offer you a laugh at any opportunity. To our brave knights of the Round Table, Rachel K., Izzy Solidarity, Victoria Bell, Sebastian Demel, Mark Harmon, Benji Arney, Scary Earth Human, Tony, DM Rivera, Resident Scarecrow, Sir Nickus, Cheryl Alvarez, Ruby Kelly, Brandon, Words Greenwood, Everything Important, Hegbert Celine, Matthew Scarborough, Stellar Vision, Ariane McCarthy, Doug Cady, Daniel Sutton, Jenna Tal, Dark Puppy, Quiet One 85, Anna Loves Riley, Omni, Riley and Anna, Poodlehawk, Multimondi, Trevbot EXE, Brian Ephraim, Anthropophojack, Catherine, Ramon Acosta, Incosin, Ralph Parler, Violent Orchard, Political Puppy, La Media Panza, Todd Buckingham, and Todd La Jeunesse. We salute our valiant heroes off to fight injustice everywhere.